Welcome back to E6, everybody. It is TJ Denzer, Senior News Editor for Shacknews, here with the Shacknews crew. We have a special discussion for y'all today. You know, a few of us here on staff like ourselves a little bit of From Software. We are slight fanatics about it, one might say. We have dug through the dungeons, we have played the new game pluses, we have done the funky builds, and we had ourselves a treat this year. Elden Ring. It finally came out after so many years of waiting. And by all accounts, it's quite good. And yeah, so we figured what better thing to include in E6 as part of our ongoing coverage and discussion than a big ol' mid-year panel all about Elden Ring. And I am joined by all of the experts on staff, starting right up there at the top with Mr. David Longreads Craddock.
What's up, TJ? I'm going to greet everyone by doing my favorite Elden Ring emote.
Nice.
It's a good one.
That's it. I do it every time. Every time someone comes in the game, they know what I'm about right away.
Excellent. Of course, right next to him, we have Denny Von Doom joining us, usually running the social media. Today, he is here with us in the action. How's it going, sir?
It's going great. You know, it's definitely a pleasure to be here, talk about Elden Ring and, it's good old Tarnished. Feeling pretty good.
Yeah. Right next to him, my fellow news editor, Donovan Erskine. A relative newcomer to From Software before this year, right?
Yeah, I felt a bit like the imposter in Among Us when you were like, we're all experts. So in From Software, I was like I'm hiding amongst the sheep. But yeah, I did love Elden Ring. It was my first From Soft game.
Nice. And of course, I think one of the few people that has actually rolled credits on the game on staff, Bill Lavoie, co-EIC of Shacknews.
I also feel like Donovan because this is, again, as you know, this is my first FromSoft game, but am I the only one to roll credits?
I think so, because Bill, only you can answer the question, why is it always door? Why is it always door? Anyway, what's up with that?
My favorite part about Bill is that he approached this game in full guides writer mode and just dismantled the whole thing from top to bottom in no long stretch of time.
Yeah.
And then finally, last but not least, our boy over in Aussie, Sam Chandler, fellow resident From Software expert. How's it going, man?
Good, mate. Thank you for having me. Thank you for everyone working in with their schedules this busy E6 week. Yeah, it's crazy times. Looking forward to discussing some Elden Ring.
Absolutely. And we've got a lot of cool topics to discuss on this today, so why don't we just go ahead and kick it off? So, the game is out. It's widely concerned. There has been so much discussion on whether or not this was the accessible From Software's game or not, and so that brings up right off the bat. Let's jump right into it. Is this a good entry point to From Software games, and if so, why?
I would say that it is. I think you could argue that every From Software Souls-born Kiro Ring game since Demon Souls has been more accessible than the last, but without making any concessions. I think fans are always worried about seeing that literal or figurative easy mode, which is a whole other bag of rabid cats. But this is definitely the most accessible. I think the nice thing that even I, as a veteran of this series, like is that what makes this it's more challenging than a lot of the other games in many ways, but what makes it more accessible is that if you wandering into an area where things just are not going your way, you just open that map and fast travel to somewhere else, wherever you want. You know, you don't have to, I mean, unless you want to grab your souls, you die to a tough enemy, you can just fast travel out. It actually has a built-in tutorial with a lot of pop-ups banish the thought that explain things in more detail than things have ever really been explained in these games before. And I think that's all for the good, because one of my beefs with this franchise since Demon Souls is it seemed to sometimes obscure the wrong things. It would keep systems and their moving parts hidden from you, which kind of lent to frustration, whereas there were maybe other things such as lore or paths through the world that should be more obscure. That stuff is fun to figure out. Figuring out how to do the thing with your controller that you need to do, not so much fun.
I actually, I think I would have played no matter what this was. So, like, for myself, I do feel like Elden Ring was plenty accessible. It had a tutorial. Now, granted, I didn't remember anything about that tutorial 20 minutes after I was done because I was, in new game overwhelm mode. But I purposely played this when it pretty soon after it first came out because I wanted to play it while people were playing it. So I didn't want to look things up to learn them. I wanted to sort of like experience the game as people figured it out so that I could kind of like be in that wave. And I think that's what made it even more accessible for me, is that I wasn't experiencing it like 2 years later when, there wasn't as much chatter around it day to day. So, but I didn't particularly find it inaccessible. It was kind of surprising that way to me. I just kind of found it like it certainly was difficult, and you certainly had to like kind of alter your approach maybe from a lot of mainstream games. But I, I don't have another From Software game to compare it to, but I didn't find it was inaccessible at all from that.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the more approachable From Soft games in the series. Like, I know that a lot of people first get up to Margit, one of the first bosses, and just grind their faces against it, and you can do that within the first 2 hours. Like, yeah, exactly. Well, I know you did that, and it's like, hey, just take a moment, turn around, look. It's not like Dark Souls 1, where once you arrive at the demon on the bridge, it's like, well, you just gotta get good and get through it, So you can turn around and explore the rest of Limgrave and hopefully not get trapped in a chest and teleported somewhere else.
Yeah,
I agree.
As a newcomer, I also had the thing where I always thought that like Souls games were like a niche that just didn't appeal to me, so I just never really gave them a chance. And then Elden Ring, I believe, is the first that came out during my time in this industry. I could be wrong about that, but I think it's the first. So I know I wanted to play it just to be a part of the convo there. And I didn't even expect it to fall in love with it. And it's exactly for what you brought up, David and Sam, about how even when the game is kind of kicking your ass, you can just go in the other direction and screw off. Like, I remember getting beat by Margit like 6 times, and I just went in the opposite direction and played for like 8 hours, and then came back and was able to get past that boss pretty easily. Which I haven't played the other From Software games, but I have the understanding that's not always how it was, which I think makes it approachable for a lot of people. I think that's what's contributed to making it such an early smash hit this year.
Did you guys feel that you ever needed to go and like farm one area repeatedly? Because there were some times in the original games where it's like, well, I have to go and farm because I don't have any blood vials, or I don't have enough XP because I want to upgrade my health, because I literally cannot get through this one boss and this is my only path forward. Did you feel like that you were locked into that?
Never locked into it, but I chose to do it because what I got from the game was not the difficulty spike, as I've explained. Like, can I face the same boss 100 times and overcome it? Yes. Do I want to? Absolutely not. So I farmed myself into OP mode so that I could just kind of like enjoy my walk through Elden Ring. Yeah. So it was like a self-imposed thing. It wasn't like the game forced me to do that. I didn't feel the game made me do it.
Yeah, I kind of felt like the farming aspect that I use more for just items or something. Like if I want to get a weapon up to a scale in a way that I wanted to use further, because I found like it worked for me really well or something like that. But for the boss end, not really. I actually like that about the game. Like Bill said, it's nothing like a day one Souls game in my opinion. When everyone's kind of chatting about it and it's thriving, there's a lot of stuff that's being discovered in real time. So that's something that you definitely want to be a part of. And yeah, I mean, I feel like it's fairly accessible as far as the entry point, because whenever I felt frustrated, there's just so much game that I could just go off to a different dungeon or a different area I haven't explored yet. And next thing I know, 3 hours have passed, and I didn't even realize it. So yeah, I think that's definitely a bit different than some of the other games in a way. where there were times where I could kind of hit a wall, depending on certain boss if my build wasn't really ready for it. But never really got that feeling from this game so far.
Mm.
I'm going to play a touch of devil's advocate. And it's not that I don't actually believe this, but like, I actually think that due to the open world nature of Elden Ring, it might be the most unevenly paced From Software game out of any of them. Like, there are times where like I would come across one of the story bosses and I would just kick the absolute ass out of him, and I was like, I'm strong, I'm bigger than you, I'm better than you, get out of my face. And then I would run into a cave and a mini boss would just beat me to death over and over and over again in like 2 or 3 hits. And I'm like, oh, I'm actually horribly weak, and I shouldn't have been talking shit. I like. Did anyone else experience that? Like a sheer amount of like you went from feeling like you were on top of it all to just feeling like a speck.
The transition zones.
Oh, listen to all that talk. I think a lot
We're all
of
excited.
people. Yeah. So I think that there are pros and cons to every approach of game design. I think one of the con of open world is, as Bill mentioned, you can get overwhelmed. I think in this case in Elden Ring, if one area isn't working out, like you said, TJ, if you hit one of those uneven areas, you just go somewhere else. The other games might have been more limited in where you could go. For example, in Demon Souls World 1-1, the infamous Red-Eyed Knight on the bridge, that guy will just flay you. And after you fight him 2 or 3 times, you realize, I'm not supposed to go this way. But there's really only like one other way to go at that point. And that way is tough, but it's not Red-Eyed Knight on the bridge tough. One issue I found, and this is where I started making comparisons to Breath of the Wild, which we can talk about more later, is that, in Breath of the Wild, you have degradable weapons, which was a pretty divisive system. I really liked it, and one of the pros of that was I didn't have to worry about upgrading the weapons. I used it until it broke, and by that time I had 10 other ones to choose from. I actually hit a point in Elden Ring. I don't know if you remember this, Bill. I was telling you about it, I think, where I had a weapon at like plus 10 for hours, because no matter where I went, I couldn't seem to find the upgrade or I needed to advance it. Now, Sam's shaking his head. He probably has the most experience with Elden Ring here because he reviewed the game for Shacknews. But I kept looking around, and I had other weapons, but none of them were quite as good because I hadn't yet. There's certain bells you can turn into the old crone in Round Table Hold, the town, where she'll sell you infinite quantities of certain upgrade stones, but I hadn't found those. I eventually just got to a point where I was like, you know what, I'm not 27 like I was when Demon Souls came out. I'm 40. I'm pretty fucking busy. And my wife looked up like, you can find the infinite stone bell here. I was like, good, thank you. And was able to progress again. I'm old now. I admit it. I'm old.
I'm with you. And I have grappled with that very same thing with a lot of games, but Elden Ring was an example where I don't have 20 hours to hopefully stumble across this thing, and that would honestly drain the fun for me. So I was very quick to be like, hey, this is where I can find this, stone. So I'm gonna go grab that stone and I'm gonna upgrade it. And I had no bones about that either, David. It was just like, okay, time to look.
In fairness, I wasn't stuck. I was just like, I was winning fights, but I was having to put in like a lot more effort than you already have to put into fights that require a lot of effort. I was just like, I'm winning here, but I feel like I could do this in like 10 fewer hits if I could just advance.
It's so interesting what some people miss in a FromSoft game and others can notice. And one of the first things I noticed was that the tunnels marked on the map gave you the upgrade materials for that area. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to go to the Altus Plateau now, and I'm going to find that specific tunnel so that I can get the next upgrade material, because I figured that's where that was going to be located.
And I think the difference
your plight is
you're right.
Breaks my heart.
and maybe David missed it, but I think the advantage for folks that have played these games before is that, Sam, there's 200 systems at play that you already understand. So I don't see that tunnel because I am literally trying not to drown in like how do I get my pouch. You know what I mean? Like I can't even bother looking at the map. I don't know. Where do I find my horse? You know what I mean? Like just stuff like that. So it was. I guess that's a bad example that since the steed is this is the first time, correct? So
Totally
I mean,
understand.
can we
that.
bring up the point that there is a map? Because I mean, that's a big deal. It's a big
is.
deal in general.
That's a huge deal.
That's so approachable, man. That's so approachable. That's so
Yeah.
good.
Easy,
Sam-
best map, best fast travel system, best waypoint system. All of the things I would ever want out of an in-game open world map are there. And then they added like NPC markers after the fact in an update, which is like, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Sam, you're totally right. I did not realize what those little. They look almost like if any of you played Oblivion. They look almost like the portals in Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion.
Yeah.
And I didn't notice those at first, or I noticed them, but I'm like, oh, that must be something I already explored. And then I realized, like, when I hover over this, no names popping up, so I must not have gone there. And then I went into one, and I realized, oh, but that was like hour 42 or something. When I connected those dots. But that's I think that's part of what's fun about these games. Like I said, I wasn't stuck. I was still able to progress. It was just more effort than I felt like I needed to or should be expending. And then that's kind of the fun of these games is kind of making those connections, and I was able to do that and upgraded pretty quickly from that point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we have a lot of topics to get through, but I have one last thing to add, and this is like, I think it runs kind of counter to a few of the points that I've heard here. Celia Crystal Tunnel. Let's talk about it for a second. I hate that place. I hate it with every fiber of my being, even having gotten strong enough to defeat it. Let's talk about what Celia Crystal Tunnel is. So, right off of the starting area in a lake, there's a ruin, and there's a treasure chest in that ruin, and if you open it, it warps you to Celia Crystal Tunnel, and it disables your ability to teleport or fast travel until you can get to a checkpoint, like a site of grace. As much as I love this game, and as much as I agree that for the most part you can go and like leave an area and do something else, I fucking hate that place.
Why did you have to? I had forgotten about that. It was legitimate. I was legitimately fucking pissed when that happened. That was
I don't think
terrible.
that happened to me.
Oh, Sam, did that happen to you?
It did, and I just like water off a duck's back, mate.
I got captured and sent elsewhere later on.
Yeah, that happened to me later on.
Stop opening chests that don't belong to you.
Dude, no. I didn't open a chest.
Like
okay, I got
3/4 of RPGs, Sam.
I got eaten, Sam. I didn't open a chest. Come on.
No.
But yeah, like this place, it wouldn't be so bad if it wasn't for these freaking shrimp monsters that fire homing darts that can like looper around corners at you.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I hate it. I
By the-
definitely hated that too.
By the time I got there, it was after I had already read all of our complaints and like Slack and on Twitter. So when I got teleported there, it was like that moment of realization. I was like, "Oh no, this is the bad place." I got out of there so fast, man. It was like 15 minutes. I darted out of that place. It was like a 1 or 2 attempt effort for me, and then I did not look back. So
that's the problem. When I got warped in, I went left when you should go right to get out of there.
yeah.
So that just compounded the misery.
So you ran into
me.
Morningstar Beast.
I did, and that was also a great time. Praise the fucking sun. That was rough. That was rough.
And the checkpoint that should normally put you before the boss doesn't work there unless they fixed it.
I don't know. I went back when I was powerful and cleaned house, and that felt good. That's one thing all these games are so good at doing. But I think that was maybe like a similar thing happens in Bloodborne, where if a creature kills you, you get kidnapped and sent to a prison area. And it wasn't, so there's that moment, and this is becoming, it's kind of like Miyazaki's new Swamp. That guy fixates on certain masochistic little tricks that he can throw at you, and this is like his new thing, the kidnapping. I don't know, man. I think that really hurt the accessibility we were just talking about, TJ. I love you, buddy, but I'm kind of like pissed at you because you made me remember all this stuff.
It was like
I do.
I have loved my time with the game. I have had so much fun exploring every part of it. That part legitimately made me like,
Yeah.
no, this game is exactly on the From Software bullshit people have been complaining about for years. It's that one spot, but
Just that one spot, really. Yeah.
but like it's
I
there.
picture Miyazaki watching like YouTube playthroughs and just watching people in that one area and just enjoying it.
And he's probably
was
got
worth it.
some story about his car breaking down and having to help, push it through the snow, and
Yeah.
and then I created this gameplay system. Yeah. But yeah, that was rough. That's the only rough patch, really. Like my only major complaint.
It's like someday a designer just stubbed their toe and they're like, I'm gonna take this out on everybody, and they designed Celia.
That's what happened, man.
Yeah, it was tough because you didn't even really have much of a choice as to whether you were going to engage in that particular bit of content. You just get teleported there.
Yep.
And it's like, all right, what do I do now? Yeah, the amount of shrimp, prawn bugs in that
Some might
cave.
call it greed. You know, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
you open that chest.
Yeah. That I think someone brought it up, and then we can move on. But someone brought up the missiles they fire. The tracking has always been hinky in these games, and that level of tracking was like Silver Knights firing great arrows on the buttresses of Enerlando. Bad, like it was rough. Yeah,
Oh, it hit me through a wall. Brilliant.
yeah.
The first one is sitting up on a cabin that you have to like jump from a cliff to get to him too. Like,
Yep. Yeah.
oh my god, it's so mean. That place is so mean.
It is mean.
But yeah, there's plenty of more we have to talk about. In fact, let's use this to segue to like experiences in this game, because like the Elden Ring is so full of interesting experiences, encounters. And I just want to go through this with everybody. Like, have you had any particular discoveries or instances that like stood out for you, even like from other From Software games that like really stood out as like, this is amazing. This is beyond what I've seen before.
There were two things, and multiple examples, but two major things that stood out to me. And one of them was realizing that I didn't have to.
Before we go in, like, obviously, for everybody watching, we're about to get into some like major spoilery territory, and I probably should have said that at the top of this, but spoiler warning. I might even tell Greg, hey, if you could take this spot right here, spoiler warning for Elden Ring throughout this entire panel. Be prepared.
Yeah,
Spoilers
sure.
incoming.
There were I don't have specific names or anything like that, because there's two things that I realized. One of them was that the open world nature and the absolute wide variety of builds and ways that you can approach content. One of the things I struggled with were dragons. Until I realized that I could just kill them in the dumbest ways possible if I spent enough time, and that's what I really got. So I literally snuck behind a dragon and butt poisoned it for 5 minutes, just like poison.
A valid approach.
And you know what? It was probably like a top 5 most fun I've had in the game, until I managed to find it. Like, then there was another dragon, and Sam, David, I'm like, fuck this dragon, okay? Like, this thing is spewing the nasty stuff at you. I don't even know what it's called anymore. I found a tree. I found, I don't know, 200 arrows, and I just sat there and I was Robin Hood. And I never had more fun, and I never felt like, like I needed to sit there and bang my head against the wall and beat that dragon.
That's the
so that
Demon
was the
Souls
one
approach to dragon slaying right there. Yeah.
That was the one. And the second one is I actually played most of the game with the multiplayer off until I realized that you could actually turn those multiplayer messages on and never get invaded, as long as you didn't like summon somebody or whatnot. And getting warning signs from people was amazing. Like, just walking up and reading a message and having it go like, look up, and you look up and you're like, you sneaky mother effer. Mm-hmm. I won't give away specific examples, but just those two things were that. And talking to Sam and David, hearing their stories, like, yeah, every day there was a new amazing story.
To piggyback on what you say about the messages, Bill, I think that the moment in the game that I realized that there were actually secret passageways in some of the walls. I think I like put my controller down because I was like 30 hours in, and there's like a million messages where it's like hidden path ahead, and I like hit the wall 3 times, and I'm like, it's not a thing. And I saw the tweets, and I'm like, why do people keep trolling like this? And I saw one, and I just swung, and the wall just like dissipates, and there's a chest behind it, and I was like, wait, no, really? And I just sat there for like 5 minutes.
You're like, do I have to go back?
Yeah, and I was just suddenly thinking of every single wall I walked past, every message I ignored, and I was like, "You sons of bitches!" Wow.
It is like
that was
Elden Ring is maybe the most gaslighting that the community has ever been with messages and secret paths and jump off this cliff for treasure.
Yeah, by jumping.
You don't have the right. Oh, you don't have the right. Oh, you don't have the right. Yeah.
Yep. I was actually getting angry with folks with those messages because, like, I'm all business in there. So someone would write something that was pointless and stupid, and I'm like, uninstall the game. Like, that is no way help. Yeah, I know. I thought of you every time, TJ, because you mentioned it. I'm like, you're the problem.
They're all business too. They're just in a different business, Bill.
Yeah.
I am the guy that's jumping on top of every spire I see and putting in try butthole.
Try butthole, which is
Yeah, I love the ones that write the messages right in front of the chest or whatever item you're trying to pick up as well. And you're trying to cycle between buttons while, things are raining down on you. That's always great too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my wife and I have played all of these games co-op. We've got she's running PS4. I've got a PS5. 2 TVs set up. We've gone through all these games together. But this is the most fun we've had because, well, when you're in a dungeon, we'll say, you do still have to use the old summon system. But we would go in the open world and just play for hours. And at first you miss the horse. And I get why they don't let you ride. I'm just going to call her Epona. I don't remember what her name is, but Ocarina of Time.
How dare you?
Ah, yeah, Torrent. So she was like, "Oh, I really miss Torrent." And I'm like, "Well, if they gave you the horse, it'd just be like people coming in and just sprinting off that way while you want to go that way." Mm-hmm. I feel like excluding the horse from online play in the open world really encourages you to stick together, explore at a slower, more, I would say, engrossing, more personal pace. And you don't have to resummon people nearly as often. We would play for hours just figuring out, there are certain statues where they'll have like trails of light that kind of trail down to like a hidden cave. We figured out a lot of those. We would just go, hey, what's over here? And we just go for hours and hours and hours. And I can't, like Bill said, I can't really describe any specific experiences, but I think the most fun we've done like Castle Stormvale and everything, which I love that area, but the open world and just the way they implemented the co-op multiplayer in that is just a blast.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's also like I like that they made some quality of life changes, like even little stuff like not losing stamina when you're running outside of a
yes.
when there's no battle happening or anything like that. It's such a convenience that's really helpful. Having a jump button and stuff like that to be able to traverse a bit differently when you don't have the horse and stuff like that is also pretty cool. I'd say discovery-wise, the first time I ran into the hand spiders, for example, that was also good times. Did not enjoy that at all. Giving me good Shadow Temple vibes, so it was rough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that was not good.
Yeah, it's so. I've got some 180 hours under my belt in Elden Ring now, so my memory's getting a bit hazy on specific moments. But one thing that I loved about it was the sense of discovery as the map slowly gets larger and larger, and you're like, hold up, how big are we getting here, boys? What's going on? And how the game would be like, I know the teleportation can sometimes bite you, like taking you to the crystal tunnels. But sometimes, like there's one particular moment where I got teleported to the bridge in Lindale Royal Capital.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, it's like a far-flung offshoot. And you open up my map, I'm like, how far am I from where I once was? And it's that thing, it was a mechanic that was repeated just a few times, but it gave you a sneak peek of, hey, here's an area that you're going to be trekking through soon. You can't go there yet. Like you're up on a little balcony that's blocked off, you can't reach it. But have a look, have a little scope around. See that thing over there? That massive thing? Yeah, you'll see, you'll see. So then now you're working back towards that. I just loved how that unfolded in this, and it's the first time it's really done it in a Soulsborne game.
Did anybody get kidnapped?
I don't think I did.
You know what I mean?
Not to my knowledge.
I know what you mean.
You know what I mean? So it would have been, not to spoil anything, but I mean, we're down the rabbit hole, but am I wrong at saying the Academy, Sam?
You were correct. Down the bottom of the academy. I think you probably took a trip down an elevator. Yeah.
I did. And I lost a fight very badly, and I was sent to somewhere bad.
I have not experienced
I got
that.
lots of upgrade stones. So.
Now I want to go get kidnapped, which is
Yeah,
just
I'm gonna go back now.
in the
One thing-
video game.
That's
Like,
one thing
yeah.
that's really cool about Elden Ring is that I've watched other people's playthroughs and they run into like encounters that I'm like, what? I went through that area. I didn't run into that. I'm gonna go back there. That's so. It's like really cool to see that kind of stuff. Just like that, the world is so big that it's so easy to miss anything happening in it.
I think if I want to just tie off like a very specific thing I remember that is like a standout in Discovery is when I realized that someone was stealing my sorry, I don't even remember the name of it anymore. It's not souls, it's
Runes.
ruins.
Yeah.
When we realized someone was stealing my ruins, and I told Sam, and he's like, nah, it's broken, it's a bug. And I'm like, dude, it's not a bug. There's someone is punking
it's a
my
jerk.
ruins right now. And we checked into it, and it was, and then I went down there and saw that fool and beat him to death. And he had my ruins! Like,
I never knew that guy was doing that. I never realized I was losing souls. But after you shared that story with me, Bill, I went back to Castle Stormville and killed him just out of principle.
yeah.
And I think he only gave me like 300 runes, so I felt kind of good about that.
30,000, David.
Oh, 3,000. Yeah, you got robbed. 30,000. You got robbed.
I was in Stormvale for a long time because I was farming a knight for specific armor that I wanted. And that's actually how I figured out that I was getting ripped, because I was respawning so quickly that I knew how many ruins I had, right? And that NPC does a lot more than steal your ruins.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more. People, I don't even know if everyone's discovered as much, but like he's up to no good.
Yeah. I gotta say, like, I have always loved From Software dragons. I think they're some of the best designed dragons in any sort of fantasy fiction. Like, they're just so cool and majestic to me. Elden Ring takes it to another dang level. Like, I took the path of non-violence with the dragons. I think they're so cool, but I refuse to kill them. I refuse to play Miyazaki's game. His horrible.
Gwyn would be so disappointed in you. Gwyn sacrificed himself to take down those dragons.
Yeah, well, I would have joined up with the Unnamed King if I had the opportunity. give me that faction.
Fair.
Oh goodness, I have to agree with you, TJ. I feel like dragons is another. We'll just call it a system. Dragon combat has improved from game to game to game, and this one, like, there is really nothing more epic than like sitting astride Torrent, swigging my flask of physique, getting ready to go, and just charging, and then seeing the dragon like swing around like, oh, you stepping? I'm like, I'm stepping, and it's on, and it's just so fun. And then the video game trope happens of like, I'm gonna kill you by hacking away at your toes, because that's just what you do in video games.
Yeah.
Man, dragon combat is super fun in this game.
The first time you're likely to run into one is at that same lake where the treasure chest is. You just see these dudes hanging out, and it's like, oh, they're having a Burning Man festival.
Mm-hmm.
And then a dragon just swoops down and just destroys everything.
Scatters everything. Yeah, it's great.
Oh, I didn't know that's where that chest was. Yeah, I just totally missed that.
See, this is what I love about these games. This happened like twice. I'm going to keep a running count. Twice in this discussion, people are like, I need to go get kidnapped. Bill needs to go get a chest. We're having good times.
And then, like, one of my all-time favorite parts of the game so far that I've run into is Grail. And if you don't know who Grail is, you got to go find Grail. Grail is an ancient dragon, and like it's in north of Khaled, where like you're heading into this area, you're riding along a trail, and you see this giant hill, and you're like, oh, that hill is full of pus and full of like rot, and then that hill started moving, and then you realize that that hill has a face, and that face is a dragon. That, like, Grail is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Just the sheer scope of it. It takes up an entire... It takes up, it takes up a good kilometer, I think, in the region that it's in. And it's just, it doesn't even attack you directly. It sends it roars, and then the little dragons around wake up and start coming at you. But
the little dragons, he says.
Yeah.
All things being relative.
Yeah, fair enough, but they weren't little when they got close, all right.
But, like, I was just, like, straight up like, man, these things are all so fucking cool. I'm not going to kill any of them. I'm just going to leave them be. They were just sleeping here before I showed up.
I hacked the bone.
Ah! Miyazaki would be proud of you.
That is one of my... another favorite From Software trope. They did it in Dark Souls 1 and 2. I don't remember if they did in 3, but ancient dragons who just have that, what even are you? I can't be bothered with you sort of attitude. That they're just that old, that powerful, that they're like, oh, I didn't even know you were there. I think that's really, really cool, and they do it so well.
Now, granted, after I killed that dragon, that's the one thing I did in this game that I felt truly bad about and would undo.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't need anything that I was getting from that dragon. And I did that, and I was like, didn't even fight back.
It's almost like you're the real monster.
Yeah, like, there goes the high ground. That's over. Yeah, I felt bad about it. I would undo that in a heartbeat. I wouldn't do it again.
So
these games do make you feel, for as sparse as the story seems on the surface, it's moments like that make you feel, and these games do that in a way that few other games can, in my opinion.
Yeah.
There's another boss fight that gave me that exact feeling, and it's not even a mandatory boss fight. It's optional. Is the Regal Ancestral Spirit. It's a first off, Nokron is maybe one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in the game. It's an underground area where you have stars in the cave. Yeah. And, like, oh my god, that whole place is just screenshot material for days. But
it's gorgeous.
But there's these torches that you can light as you're going through various areas of Nokron, and you can and if you light them all, you wake the ancestor spirit, and you can go and fight it. And it is like, it's a magical skeletal stag that fights you in this cave. And the regular one, like, it's beautiful as is. It has some of my most favorite music in the game. But the Regal Ancestor Spirit, it was like a bittersweet fight, because it's not just the stag. There are ghosts and spirits of various animals just wandering around the arena as you fight with this thing. And as you damage it, it channels and draws in the spirits around it to restore its health.
It's cool.
And to me, that was like, oh my... Not only did I feel bad for, like, disturbing it, I felt bad that, like, it was forced to use its power to kill it, to, like, draw in the energy around it to keep fighting me. It's not even that particularly hard of a boss fight, but I think by the time I was done with that, I was a little misty-eyed by it. Just like the whole experience.
The whole Nokron and underground areas creep me out. I love the music because I find it so haunting and chilling.
I don't think this is on our agenda, but Sam, you raise a good point. What does everyone think about the use of background music for really the first time in these games outside of boss fights? I ended up really liking it. I thought that each area's track was very fitting and atmospheric and just kind of enhanced the mood, at least for me.
Yeah.
I like the music. I think having that and actual night and day cycles was definitely really immersive.
You know what the
Also
music
being able to
reminded?
I'll go
The
ahead.
music reminded me of, and I don't mean it sounded the same, but um, if you've played The Witcher 3 and you've gone to Skellige Isle, can you hear the music right now? Because I can, and that's the thing about Elden Ring is I would go into certain areas and certain situations, and I would be like, oh, like I know what's happening or where I am or what I'm doing. Like it was distinct in the way that it sort of like became part of the identity of the situation, like whether it was the fight or the area, and like I thought that was really well done. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
I mean, yeah, I've still got Majula up here.
Oh
Video.
yeah,
Still
man.
playing over. Yeah.
Same. Of a point of Demon or Dark Souls 2 we can agree on, Sam. I knew what happened eventually.
I
But
know. We found it.
I
We found it.
yeah, I found it. It took years, but I found it. I think my favorite track, I can't remember what this type of dungeon is called, but it's the catacombs type levels where you have to find the lever to open the door near the beginning. That track is just so like chilling. I'm just on edge. Even though I'm going back to like the early game areas, I'm like level 120 something now, and I know I can probably just mop the floor with my weapons, but that track still creeps me out even when I'm in one of those early game catacombs levels because of that music.
Yeah. Well, to keep things moving along, we have one of the topics suggested by David yourself. Elden Ring versus Breath of the Wild. So, like, this game, obviously, it kind of just... We've talked about it quite a bit here already. Like, it kind of just shoves you off and lets you do whatever you feel like doing. To the point where, like, you can just straight up leave an area if you're feeling crushed by it. And, like, it's... There are some folks that have said it's lazy to draw that comparison to Breath of the Wild because it's like, everyone... Ever since Breath of the Wild has come out, everyone, whenever they face an open world, they're like, oh, Breath of the Wild. But is it really? Like, is Elden Ring really that close to Breath of the Wild? Is it better than Breath of the Wild? Worse than Breath of the Wild?
I think that, so in response to that, I would say that Breath of the Wild was the Dark Souls of Zelda games. There's another comparison that gets thrown around a lot. I wanted to bring this up because I don't think it's a matter of versus to me. I don't know if Elden Ring is better than Breath of the Wild, which has like a 5-year head start on this game. But I think that Elden Ring, to me, represents the most significant advancement in the design of open world games since Breath of the Wild. There have been a lot of imitators of Breath of the Wild. We've seen they didn't really start to come crawling out of the woodwork until 2019 or so, because it takes a couple of years usually for developers to catch up. But so one of the areas of Breath of the Wild I felt was very weak was the main dungeons. I didn't like the Divine Beast because it was really just kind of a riff on the expression same shit, different day. It was just a different beast, but I was still just moving parts around. I found it boring. I waited a long time to even do a Divine Beast, a second one, because the first one was just so dull. I loved the shrines, but I didn't like the Divine Beasts. I feel like, there was a lot of complaints from Zelda fans that they missed the traditional dungeons, and I understand why Nintendo left them out, but Elden Ring solved that for me. You have several different types of smaller dungeons. You have I think they're called the Legacy dungeons, like Castle Stormvale. I keep coming back to that because it is just a gorgeously designed, in terms of visual direction and layout and pacing, castle. Maybe the best castle in any one of these games, and that's another thing they've kind of improved on from game to game. And so I really feel like this game is it's a compliment to Breath of the Wild. If you wanted to like that game more, but you didn't like the weapon degradation, or you missed the more traditional Zelda-style dungeons, I feel like Elden Ring kind of offers those things. I don't think it is, within the context of From Software's games, I don't think this is as radical a departure from the norm as Breath of the Wild was to Zelda, which in and of itself was really kind of closing the loop, because Breath of the Wild is just Zelda 1 in 3D in a lot of ways, just kind of throwing you in and saying, go, have fun. But I feel like they solved all the issues I had with Breath of the Wild, and these two games kind of go hand in hand with me, or for me.
Yeah. I think
it's
that...
good.
sorry, Donnie.
No, you go, you go.
I was just going to say, I don't think it's lazy to compare Breath of the Wild to Elden Ring and vice versa. I think it's easy. And specifically, it's easy because if you need a way to immediately give a reader or a viewer a reference point,
Yeah.
and like, hey, okay, I immediately understand sort of like what we're talking about. I avoided mentioning it in my review of Elden Ring, Breath of the Wild, that is, because I wanted Elden Ring to stand on its own and I wanted it to be its own sort of thing. What I think is important when discussing these two games, and I think, David, you touched on it a little bit, is just how each one revolutionized its own franchise. Breath of the Wild fundamentally changed what people expect of a Zelda game, and I think Elden Ring has done that for From Software and its Soulsborne games.
Yeah.
I can't see From moving back to the Dark Souls 1 sort of very linear thing. Though Sekiro was great in that regard, I think that Elden Ring has just completely changed the landscape of what players have come to expect from it. And I think that's where a good comparison is between the two titans, Elden Ring and Breath of the Wild.
The exploration they opened up by adding a manual jump button is mind-boggling. The fact that you can just, there are areas even in the open world or in the dungeons, legacy otherwise, where you just hop on a ledge and suddenly like all these other paths just kind of spider web out. And it also completely threw off the control scheme for me. I had to spend a lot of time like, what do I want my jump button to be? But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think that in many ways this is Dark Souls 4 for me, but it's a revolution of they kind of took the beating heart of Dark Souls and they transplanted it into a new body, much like Nintendo did with Zelda back in 2017.
I agree for the most part. Like, at this point, like, it's very hard to have a completely original idea anymore. And I think everything is, in some ways, derivative of something else. And I agree with you that Elden Ring is a very good refinement of a lot of good things that we've seen before done well. I will say that I don't like that common trope with open world games is that they reuse content to fill the space, and like Elden Ring is not innocent of that. It has more than a few dungeons where it's like, oh, you defeated one fire breathing cat boss? How about two fire breathing cat bosses?
Yeah,
that's actually a really good point, because those who like David and Sam kind of followed, like I had a 3-way DM going where I would kind of like summarize what I was doing, or in some cases I had my kill list of bosses the night before, and like sometimes it would be like, you know, better than other nights, but
right.
I want to say I hit like 80 hours in Elden Ring, and I was like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore, because I've been in a few dozen dungeons and I've seen a few dozen different kinds of world bosses and a bunch of different cat bosses and tree sentinels and all this other thing, and I don't, even though I know there's something I've never seen before coming up, it's not going to shock me anymore. It's not going to give me something that is unforgettable. Like, I've got so much that's been unforgettable and so much fun, and I just had to be done it. Like, I just wanted to be through it, and I blitzed the main path over the last 15 hours, literally just going from one boss to the next boss to the next boss. I want to be careful because I don't think having too much content is bad. I think that's a good problem to have instead of having not enough content, for example.
Well, creep is a problem in open world games, though. I think you're right. You know?
Yeah. But I don't want it to take away, because I loved my time with it, but I was like, I just don't have another 100 hours in me. Like, I just don't have that, you know, to explore another catacomb or another dungeon. Like, you know, I feel like I feel like I've experienced this game now and I've really enjoyed it, but I kind of want to play something else, you know.
I do think that it's funny that Elden Ring's spending the first like year of its lifespan getting all the like heavy comparisons to Breath of the Wild, and a lot of them are justified. And then in less than a year, probably we're gonna get the other side of that when Breath of the Wild 2 comes out. Everyone's gonna compare Breath of the Wild 2 to Elden Ring, like they're gonna go right up against each other, and they'll be much more closer in proximity as far as release goes. I just think it's funny that it's had to deal with the shadow of Breath of the Wild that came out all the way back in 2017, for God's sakes, and now it's gonna have to deal with whatever Nintendo has up its sleeve for the sequel next year. That's going to be quite the discussion that will never end.
I will just to add to what Bill said. I agreed, and if we're doing a head-to-head battle here, I would give this category to Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild has so much bespoke, handcrafted content, as does Elden Ring. But what I really liked about Breath of the Wild's shrines, which were its mini dungeons, was you could kind of say that that's where fatigue might set in, because all the interior environments are the same music, same textures. But I loved the shrines, and I never got tired of them because they're all bite-sized. They have like usually one mechanic. There's always a solution for solving a shrine in Breath of the Wild, but you don't have to have that solution. You make it up yourself. Whereas Souls games are usually, progression is usually some form of a combat gauntlet. It's your build versus the environment, and that's very compelling. But I was usually so engaged with manipulating the physics and the chemistry systems in Breath of the Wild that I never got fatigued of the shrines. And like I said again, they were always small enough that I had that moment of exultation where I figured something out. It was my own approach to solving the problem, and then I was done. And then I was out and leaving again. I didn't quite get that with Elden Ring, and I don't think they're bad, but there were times when I would come to certain types of mini dungeons, like the catacombs. The catacombs, I was like, I don't need to fight another cat statue. I would rather do the caves because I know that I usually get a bell. Like it's the reward in each type of dungeon is usually the same. Like if you go to the crucibles, the little arenas, you'll usually get like a new summonable spirit or something. I feel like in Elden Ring, the optional dungeons become, okay, I know that this type of dungeon has X reward at the end of it. Do I need more of that, or do I not need more of that? But I also think in the pro column, that factors into the agency you have in taking the world at your own pace and deciding your own approach.
I actually agree. I think it's interesting you mentioned reward because, first of all, I agree with Breath of the Wild. I love those mini puzzles. I really did. But what I liked about them was the consistency of the reward, which is that I genuinely knew what I was doing there, why I was doing it, and what I was getting from it. And I like that direct correlation between becoming more powerful. Whereas, I didn't particularly spend a lot of attention in Elden Ring trying to notice like what kind of reward came from what. Like, I mean, you kind of get a feel for it over time, but like I didn't focus on it too much. But I felt like I could play Elden Ring for 10 hours and not get a single drop that I actually wanted. Whereas I felt like the consistency was there a little bit more with the shrines.
Yeah, so, that makes sense. And to be clear, I love both these games, but since the comparisons were and still are inevitable, and as Donovan said, it's going to start again in another 12 months or so, I just thought like, well, how does each game kind of complement each other? And I really feel like if you like open world games, these are really two of the best that represent the most radical, in a good way, departure from the GTA 3 formula that was so pervasive for so damn long in every other open world style game.
Yeah.
I do think that Elden Ring could learn a thing or two about crafting. I didn't really use crafting much in Elden Ring.
I haven't either. And in fact, what I really wanted from crafting was when I would get like a new cookbook, I want like a little new flashing over new recipes, because I honestly like couldn't tell. Like there were certain things like my character is sword and board, so like I wasn't really interested in being able to craft more arrows because I didn't use arrows, but I would still like to know. I think part of the fun of open world games is, what new thing did I get? What have I expanded? I want to see that. I crafted like a certain type of meat to increase my attack power and something else to raise my stamina, and that's really been largely it for me.
I crafted arrows only for farming, but I'm the same way. Like once I had my hammer, I was like, we're good.
Right.
We don't need anything else.
Y'all aren't dexterity builds, and it shows. I've spent probably about a third of my time in Elden Ring just killing thousands and thousands and thousands of deer, so I can make bone arrows, fire arrows.
So you won't kill the dragons. Which
I'm
will
with
kill
TJ.
you on sight. You're with TJ though, Tom. Okay.
I
Those
made
dragons,
a lot of arrows.
those dragons have souls. They have spirit. They have treasures. They are living their lives peacefully.
Much like Bambi's mom, dude. You're evil. You're terrible.
Stormvale Castle, big bridge where you take something.
Mhm.
What are those great big giant things that guard it?
Great big
golems.
giant-
Yeah.
The
Golems.
giant, yeah.
That's
Wolves.
all I did. I farmed them for hours because I got it down to where I could stun them and knock them each down like instantly, and I was getting the great bow and great arrows. So I was just absolutely loaded with great arrows.
Well,
I don't shoot little bows.
I always kept a good stock of regular arrows and poison bone darts. That's
I
the
love
other
the
one.
poison bone darts. I do love those.
But yeah, and speaking on this matter, speaking of getting stronger in the tools you use, what is your playstyle in Elden Ring? Let's talk about this a bit. Like continuing on what I talked about. Like I went full dexterity in this game. I love stylish weapons. I love magical weapons, and so I went mostly dexterity with arcane as my backup stat. And I gotta say, it paid. Like I was really disappointed with the early amount of the early offering of weapons I was getting, but like once I got to Altus Plateau, I was actually having a crisis of what I should be like using as my primary because I have so many cool tools to use in this game. Like my current favorite is a cross spear that I decked out with either poison, like a poison cloud attack, or a holy javelin attack. And it's been really fun moving between different tools and seeing what works best.
I just went with a giant hammer that was in the shape of a ball, like I guess a morning star kind of thing, with spikes on it that cause bleed. Upgraded it all the way, and my entire play style was let's go shot for shot and see who falls first. And I stuck to that. Like in every boss fight, my go-to move was jump, attack, heavy attack. That is it. That
I
is
saw your
all I did.
videos on Twitter. I'm like, oh, Bill's started. This is the opening salvo. Like,
Yeah, and but that wasn't the opening salvo. That's the move. There was no other move. There was no like secondary move.
the final salvo. That's true.
And I to that point, David, like you said, you're level 120. I'm over it because I farmed my ass off so that I could sit there and literally just go, let's punch each other in the face, and I bet you'll fall first. And that was my entire playstyle.
And Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but you came to me. You're like, Sam, there's a talisman that increases my damage when I jump on my jumping attacks.
I never took it off.
And I'm going to find it. Yeah.
I never took it off. I was like, I need to carry more shit because I carry a great bow like an idiot and a giant hammer, and that's it. I need to be able to carry a lot of stuff, and I need to be able to jump up and hit things hard, and that's all I want to do. And increase my health because I take a lot of damage.
Now I just picture you carrying everything. Like you probably carry Torrent just for fun because you're just a big beefy boy, you know.
Hammer, Torrent, just bop.
That's
And like it was a wonderful day when I realized I was like, it must have been like 40, 50, 60 hours, and I'm like, why do I have a shield? I have never blocked anything in my entire life. Like everything I do is rolling, so I'm just like, throw the shield into the ocean, two-hand the hammer, let's go.
This boy's rocking big poise.
Yeah.
Denny, did you play a sorcerer, Denny?
I had a mix. I dex build and some magic. So, you know, I put some solid points into intelligence, you know, to get some of those cool spells. And I like, you know, being able to summon swords around me, and also like the spinning sword moves. I had dual wielding like scimitar blades with bleed on them. So I like seeing that giant chunk of health when the bleed bar goes up enough to get that scaling going. So far it's working out for me. I feel like I want to switch to maybe using the scythe or something at some point, you know. But I'm all about the fashion too, so I'd have to find like a Grim Reaper fit.
I'm super jealous of magic builds in this game because this game, like Elden Ring, looks like it's the most generous and kind to magic users that From Software has ever been.
So magic has always been OP, but when I was up against a boss that rhymes with Pyre clients. I didn't really try hard there. And I summoned this magic build, and as soon as I died once, so I summon her, and I go, Sam, you like that? I walk through the fog gate. She comes through, and she like impales herself, and her HP bar just goes whoop. I'm like, I hope you know what you're doing. And the client of Pyre stood up, and this caster just called down meteors, and the life bar went. I was like, what the hell have I been doing this whole time with my big sword? That looks cool. And like one of my complaints about these games for years has been that like Magic has always been the quote unquote easy mode. There's nothing wrong with it. I love playing Magic builds. But all the spells have really just been like bigger magic missile.
Yeah.
This game's spells, I mean the miracles, the sorceries, the pyromancies, all of it are so damn cool. Like they really took time to add so much cool new stuff that I cannot wait to roll a Magic build. But I'm curious, we haven't heard from Donovan. Donovan, you used a lot of bow and arrow, didn't you?
I went hard archer in this game. I put a lot of points
That's
into
cool.
dexterity. Yeah, I even had a long phase where it was literally long bow and short bow. And I would just use, I forget the name of the actual ability on the long bow where you charge like one heavy strike, and then as they were running to me, I would switch to short bow and just start like jump shooting. Because if you jump and shoot, then you get a second one off really fast when you hit the ground without having. Yeah. And that was a lot of fun. And then I got a little further in the game, and I kind of was forced to start using daggers because some bosses just weren't having the arrow shenanigans. So I had to adapt there. But even with the arrows, like Denny said, with blood, I think it's the bloodbone arrows that have the bleed effect on them. So satisfying to use when you build up the bleed and you just watch the huge yellow block drop in their health.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of that, and of course I put a lot of points into vigor because I'm still a noob to these games, so I needed all the padding that I could get. But,
Vigor. Do it.
Sam, am I wrong? But vigor is actually more important than endurance in this game. Usually it's the opposite,
man.
but man, I needed that HP.
Yeah, get that HP up because that last gauntlet to the finish line is not kind. Yeah, it sounds like all of you's kind of used a bunch of different weapons. I started as a vagabond, and I'm like, I'm a knight, and I used the starting longsword through the entire game. Didn't use any other weapon. Upgraded it to 25 and slayed the final boss with it. It got me through.
Wow.
It got me through. Love it.
I
Love my longsword.
just the one. I mean, early on I did. I used whatever I could find early on, but I eventually looked up a guide for what I wanted, which was a hammer that does bleed. I found out where it was. I looked up a much more extensive guide on how to get there at that point in the game. Went there, got my hammer, came back, never looked back. That was it.
I like having magic on hand. I just feel like, yes, with the deck scaling and stuff like that, I could have gone bow and arrow, but the magic is just so much cooler. And plus, there's so many different spells you can call out. Like when I can call like a spell that will toss up a giant ball that will rain down fireballs from on top of people from across the way. So it's like, shooting arrows are raining down burst attacks on several enemies at once. I'm gonna go with that route.
Hey, look, if you don't want to get up close to the boss, I understand. I'll get up close and hit him with my longsword. Don't worry.
please do.
Called a longsword, so you have distance.
Yeah, about that much.
Yeah, it's not that long.
Yeah, I know. But it's still about a foot longer than my hammer.
That's true. That's
it's
true.
not the
But I
sword
think
or bastard sword.
from what you've described, Bill, if it came to a one-on-one, Sam would probably fall down first to your hammer time tactics.
I don't know. Just because I committed to that doesn't mean I was overly successful. I definitely summoned some help. Oddly, one of the only bosses I didn't summon help for was the Pyre client. And it wasn't for a lack of effort, it was for a lack of ability to summon that. And I beat it on my own with blood flies, Denny.
Nice.
Yes.
So
Nice choice.
So
I'm picturing you this giant hammer and blood flies. Just...
yep, just bonk.
So to keep things moving, I gotta say, like, this game, Elden Ring, NPCs in this game, their quest lines, the encounters you have with like non-hostiles, probably some of my favorite characters in From Software. Like we did a list of we all talked about like who was the coolest From Software characters. If we did that list again right now, I would probably have some very different opinions based off of some of the encounters we had in this game. So I'll open it up. Like, who is your favorite NPC you've come across in this game, and why is it Blad or Aria?
I can't comment on this. I'm terrible. I don't know any of their names. My first playthrough, I don't keep track of the story. If they don't have anything to sell me, I do not know them. But in my second playthrough, I go through and do quest lines. I want to hear from Sam, because all this time you spent, you've probably played through it more than once, I imagine, and have done a lot of these quest lines.
I have to admit that I have not played it through more than once. I am at the final. I need to figure out which ending I want to choose, and so once I do what I got to do that, then I'll be going through more, because right now I'm just collecting all the talismans that I've missed, gone through all the dungeons. But in terms of favorite NPC, Gideon Ofnir. Let me tell you about him. The pursuit of knowledge, the trade that we have going with Gideon in the Round Table Hold. I felt like he and I were like a kindred spirits, or two sides of the same coin rolling down a similar path, you know, like him gaining brains and me gaining brawn as I'm defeating bosses and coming back to him with like, hey, this is where such and such is, and this is where such and such is. And he's an NPC, a character that prides himself on knowledge. His name is literally Gideon Ofnir, the All-Knowing, if I'm not mistaken. He wants to know everything, and so I think it's admirable that he tells you things he doesn't know, things he wishes he does know. I think it's a good message for people as well. Like, it's okay to admit you don't know something, even if it might hurt your pride, and sort of like, he is known as the All-Knowing, and for him to be like, hey, I actually don't know everything, and it's this pursuit of knowledge that I'm after. And I love his arc, and nice. I'm looking forward to seeing Gideon again in New Game Plus.
Sam, does he wear a big hat that obscures most of his face?
No, he does not.
No, he does not.
No. He's the bloke in the Round Table Hold who is off in the corner, hunched over the table. He almost looks like a from Lord of the Rings. Oh, the name's escaped me. But he's got like a helmet on and a dark, occluded face that you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I know who you're talking about.
Anyone else?
I like Melina. Bit of probably a basic pick, but I don't know. I feel like Elden Ring is a game where every living being you come across is either lying to you or trying to kill you or stab you in the back. She's pretty cool. It was nice to have her around whenever she popped up. It was always a joy.
Mine's simple. It's the dude that stole all my runes. You know,
Keep a Gustock. Nice.
had to die, like, out of principle. Had to die, but nothing personal. I get it. Good drive.
Is he the same one who, after you beat, I think it's the first boss of Castle Stormville, is he the one who's like kicking its shriveled corpse? Or maybe it's the second one. That was hilarious. I did love
Well,
that.
I wouldn't know what he kicked because he was dead.
Oh, that's true.
But I have gone back and investigated through other, stream and YouTube and stuff like that, and yeah, that's the dude who does the kicking, I think.
Gotcha.
I gotta say, I had an NPC that like profoundly changed my events related to this NPC. Profoundly changed my perspective of my own character as I was playing through the game. I kind of played through Elden Ring like as a sort of treasure hunter thief, which is why I went after like lavish magical weapons that were stylish. But either way, the Wolfman. He is a half wolf. He is a half wolf warrior, who you've probably seen him in the loading screens. He's got a wolf head. He's got a giant suit of armor. He's got a huge fur cloak and a massive greatsword. And he is the bestest boy. He is the guardian of the witch that at the very beginning of the game who gives you your first summon. And oh my god, I should have known from like the very beginning, once I met him, that being as cool as he is, From Software would do terrible things to him, and like I kind of don't want to spoil it, but like you go through some shit with Blade. Like you fight through some serious battles with him. He's one of the companions that joins you in the fight against Star Scourge Radon.
Festival of Radon. So good.
That is an awesome instance in that game. And Blade is one of the NPCs that helps you there. He's just like all along your path with him. He is like your brother in arms. And then like some very tragic shit happens, and I was so affected by it that like it changed my perspective of my character, where I stopped going this treasure hunter path, and I picked up Blade's armor and I wore it, and I swore I'd carry on his mission.
And then you killed all the dragons, right?
No.
Oh.
TJ, I absolutely obliterated that dude and never looked back.
You obliterated the Wolfman?
Awful.
He had nice armor, TJ. Like,
you're a monster.
Listen, I'm from
I
those.
was chilling when I met him. I mean,
He fell down first, I guess.
Yep. If you're wearing something that I think looks good on me, you're in trouble.
He is so freaking cool. And if Miyazaki isn't a coward, he'll let me have a way to save that guy in DLC.
I do agree with you, though. I did like the NPC TJ for sure. Like,
can I point out that the witch that you mentioned, I never met, because I found out the hard way that apparently you can not find her. So I never had a first summon experience with that situation at all.
You can totally not find her.
Ranny is also
Sam
very
had
cool.
to tell me how to find her.
You didn't find Rena?
Ranny.
But
Yeah, I found Ronnie.
she calls herself Rena at first, and then you go and she's like, actually, it's trying to be misleading. My name's Ronnie. But you never. That's crazy.
There is. Yeah, there is like, you can miss Ranny. You can totally miss Blade too, because like you have to come across that ruin where he's howling, and then you have to go back to that first merchant and ask him about it.
Oh, I've heard the howling. Okay. Okay.
Dude, yeah, like that's the thing. Sam.
Oh, that's up. We're up to like 5 now, actually.
Oh, okay.
We are.
Sam's always like, I don't know how you missed this. Sam literally had to tell me to go back to a certain place and wait at a certain time to see a certain someone to get a summon. And I'm like,
how you missed that. No.
I'm like, he's like, how did you not know to go to this random location at midnight? And I'm like, Sam, where's my waypoint, Sam? He's like, wrong game, man. Get out.
Well, we have run incredibly long, and so I have to do us the misfortune of cutting us off. But I will end it on this note. Like, what do you want to see out of Elden Ring? What do you want out of DLC for this game if we get it? And we'll start with you, David.
I would love another continent similar to the floating ruined city. That's where I am right now. I feel like the design of the map opens itself up to that. In previous FromSoft Souls games, the DLC always felt kind of bolted on in the most arcane way possible. With this one, I feel like they could just say, "Oh yeah, we put another continent over here, and it's available now." Like, I just want another big, huge place with maybe another really cool, intricate dungeon legacy dungeon. To explore.
Danny, what do you want to see out of Elden Ring DLC?
I think something like coastal would be cool, like something across the ocean or something like that would be pretty cool to explore. Also, I feel like I might be the only one who actually does some PvP action in here, so I'm always looking for more PvP shenanigans to get in on with new weapon types, or even a new battleground area or something like that I can go in and try my best against other players. So I think something on the PvP side would be pretty cool to have show up in an expansion.
Nice. Donovan?
Hearing David talk about like a new continent or more land, I kind of want to go like underwater. I want like a weird like From Software take on like Atlantis, weird underwater creature kind of place. I think that'd be kind of cool. Something
They
like
can
that.
knock that out of the park. We already got like a world within a world type deal with the subterranean city, so I'd be down for
Yeah.
something like that too.
Mhm.
It seems like they've left themselves so much space to insert new stuff. I like that.
Big Pirates of the Caribbean energy, you know.
Yeah.
Swashbuckling.
Yeah.
Bill, what do you want to see?
You know what?
Bigger hammers.
Specific. You will not believe it, but that was literally my answer.
I do
Just a
believe it.
bigger hammer. But no, I you know what? Surprised me. I enjoyed that game, and I had no idea what to expect, and I don't even want to ask or predict. I just want to like just roll something out and let me try it, and I have a feeling I'll enjoy it. So, but a bigger hammer for sure.
And Sam?
I want them to go a Taurus of the Abyss DLC style. Take me back in time. Take me back to when Michaela's Hug tree was the main tree. The Erd tree wasn't even there. Take me back to the time of the Crucible, the Knights, when they ruled, and show me what the Lands Between was before all the Tarnish were exiled and when the Erd tree wasn't there. Yeah, I want to see what that is. I wanna
Sounds
see
cool
that.
too.
PJ?
And yeah, I already hinted at it a little bit. I would like extensions of some of the NPC quests because, like I said, like Blade's questline is so involved, and Ranni's questline is so involved, it actually leads up to one of the endings. But it makes me angry that Blade's part in that turns out the way it does, and I should have known because it's from Software, but it didn't keep me from keeping hope alive. And I guess if I'm going to keep hope alive now, I have to keep hope alive in the DLC. But this has been an incredible conversation, some wonderful perspectives. Obviously, this game has been so wild, so crazy. It's a front runner for Game of the Year for a lot of people, and for good reason. And thank you all for being here to talk about this. Thank you all for sharing your opinions on this wonderful game. And you out there, if you have any opinions, if you want to talk about your experience, sign off in the comments. Let us know about your journeys through Elden Ring. But that has been it. This has been a huge part of E6. More to come. Brought to you by Shack Pets. If you haven't checked it out, be sure to check out Shack Pets. It's our free app on shacknews.com. You can get it on iOS or Android. It is the ultimate battle for cuteness. Some would say it's a contender for Game of the Year. You don't even have to spend $1 on it. So there you go. Check it out, and we will have more E6 content coming at you, so stay tuned, y'all.